Welcome back. Still Breakfast Central with Elisa and Felicity. It's Monday. We're going straight to the impact, but don't forget, catch us right here. Join the discussion, join the debate at New Central TV. Use the hashtag #NCBreakfastCentral. We're talking about now Nigerian returnees.
So, on March 17, 2021, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, that's NIDCOM, announced that another batch of 180 Nigerians stranded in Libya were received at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Now, the Commission said this is the latest returnees from Libya since the evacuation exercise began in 2017.
Now, according to NIDCOM, the returnees were quarantined at the Federal Capital Territory Hajj camp for 14 days in line with new COVID-19 protocols. Now, the International Organization for Migration, that's the IOM, has in recent months accelerated a voluntary returns program to repatriate migrants from a number of countries across the globe.
We now have joining us Franz Celestine. He is the IOM Nigeria Chief of Mission. It's a pleasure to have you on Breakfast Central. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. We understand the IOM facilitated the return of 120 stranded Nigerians from Libya recently. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. This is part of our process, the voluntary return process that, as you correctly pointed out, that IOM has been working with the federal government of Nigeria to bring Nigerians who are stranded in Libya, but throughout even West Africa, including Niger, Mali, and further beyond Lebanon, Singapore, and the European countries. If we were to look at just the recent returnees, they were all from Libya. A lot of them actually were in the urban centers where they decided that they can no longer stay in that country and they wanted to come back home. There were some of them that were in the detention centers, which we have worked with the Libyan government to release them in order to bring them back. But it's a work that we do with the Nigerian mission in Tripoli and the various agencies here in Nigeria to bring all of the Nigerian back, be it unaccompanied minor children, trafficked women, and a number of those who want to come back home voluntarily.
All right. Franz, I want to take you up on the term voluntarily returning. Now, it's coming from the IOM in partnership with the federal government. In terms of what you've seen so far, if it's voluntary return, where are we having this voluntarily returning returnees coming from? Is it Libya? Is it the Horn of Africa? Or is it Europe? Where do you see these mass numbers coming from?
Right. So the vast majority, I would say about 90% of, more than 90% of those who are coming back from Libya. But even at the height of COVID-19 restrictions, when the borders were closed, we were working with the federal government to return people from Lebanon, for example. More than 300 came back from Lebanon.
Wow.
We brought a number from Mali, I believe it was 120. And then we had about 180 from Niger. Doing that, we were creating what we call humanitarian corridors, working with these governments to allow the migrants who were in very, very inhumane conditions to come back to Nigeria despite the border closure. So it was a team effort working with all of these governments. But they were coming from all over the planet, specifically, well, the neighboring countries, but also the Middle East, Asia, and Europe.
Okay.
All right. How does these evacuations happen really? You talked about the numbers that you have brought back. Are they all voluntary returns, or maybe they were compelled to?
Well, that's an excellent question, and we have to differentiate between those two, because there are those forced returns. These are people who may have violated their their visas or their tenure, who may have had issues with law enforcement in those countries. These people are returned back to Nigeria by the countries, or the host countries themselves. We don't participate in forced returns as IOM. Every returnee that we work with has to be voluntary. They decide that the conditions are such that in the host country that they want to come back, we would work with them. And that process requires coordination from a number of entities. That's IOM itself, the various IOM offices, depending on where they're coming from, the Nigerian mission in that country, the NIS, NCFRMI, the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs, and there's NAPTIP. So it's a complex process to bring people back, and of course to even charter the flight, because we have to charter a specific flight to bring them back. We even do medical assessment for them to make sure that they're fit for travel. And if they have any pre-existing medical conditions, that we connect them, we make the necessary provision for them to have the care when they're in Nigeria, beyond just coming back to the country. So there's a lot going on in terms of coordination, planning, and having the necessary provision for the Nigerian migrants before they come back home.
All right, Franz. According to your organization, the IOM, over 20,000 Nigerians have been evacuated back into the country since the exercise started in 2017. Now, what are some of the recurring reasons they give for returning?
Right. Even for return is the condition in the country, the host country. They may no longer able to work. They may be pursued by law enforcement in that country, or some of them are traffic victims and they've escaped it and they want to come back to the country. But then when, in fact, we've had the conversation with those coming back, about 72% of them said they faced some sort of exploitation and abuse during their stay in Libya or whichever country they may have found themselves in. So, and then you wonder, why do people migrate? Why do they risk their lives, knowing the difficulties that they'll face in the country, knowing that they might even die during the process? There are a lot of push factors in the country here, and then a lot of pull factors in the host countries or the countries that they think might be a greener pasture for them.
All right, what measures are being taken to reintegrate these returnees into the society? We know the work is not just for the IOM alone. How are you collaborating with the Nigerian government in terms of resettling and reintegrating these returnees?
That's an excellent question, because I think that's the harder part. I told you the intricacies involved in bringing people back, but I think getting them to reintegrate in society, to be productive members of society, is even harder than bringing them back. So it has to be a whole of society approach to sustainable reintegration for those coming back. And we have to work with society, the government, the communities where they're going back to. And, there's the issue of stigma that we have to address in that. So we work with more than 30 stakeholders to create the necessary environment for those guys when they come back, not only to survive, but to thrive in that environment. So we have the different types of packages for those coming back. There's the individual package. For the normal person coming back, there's the enhanced individual package for those who've been trafficked or abused. And there's the what we call the collective package, where we join 3 to 5 persons together to create something, a small enterprise that can work for them. And then the community level package, I think, is the most important one, because we see a lot of the push for people to migrate comes from the family unit, comes from the community. So it's important to target these various constituencies to make sure that when people migrate, they do it safely, but they are not pushed to migrate. So we work with, for example, I mentioned before, NTFRMI, NAPTIP, NEMA, the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, even aviation for getting the landing permits, port health. So it's like I said, it's a whole of government approach, but a whole of society approach. So it's an excellent partnership that we have to support the government to bring back Nigerian citizens to the country.
Wow, quite an effort, you have to say, Franz. Different organizations just putting together to bring, Nigerian citizens back from their country, even if, voluntarily. But we need to ask you before we let you go, is there another batch of returnees coming anytime soon?
Right, and last year, before COVID, we were having 3 flights per week.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's usually on average about 180 persons per flight. But now we've, since at the peak of it, we were, and then we were to 2 flights per month. And during the COVID-19, I think we had about 4 or 5 flights. So we are now negotiating with the government, taking all of the measures in place to have them. We have an upcoming flight later this month. And we have about 1,000 persons waiting to be moved back to Nigeria. So we're going to do it as soon as possible. So we may have 1 flight per month in the coming months.
Wow. Right. Thank you so much, Franz Celestine, Chief of Missions for the International Organization for Migration in Nigeria. Thank you very much for coming on Breakfast Central.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
It's our pleasure.
Wow.
What we keep talking about, people putting themselves and their lives at risk on a daily just to, better, let me use our familiar word we use, better themselves, it's, I don't know, when you do all of that and then you still come back and then you still have to start all over again.
And the numbers are quite shocking because we are focusing our attention on Libya and all that, but he just mentioned about 300 from Beirut, Lebanon, and different other countries. So you're asking the thousands of Nigerians.
Yeah, the sad part for me is you come back and you still have to start all over again.
Yeah, it can be quite a
sometimes, they take all their investment, all their life savings to leave the country, and then it doesn't work out, they take a risk. Well, we're glad you're back safely. I mean, they say when there is life, there is always hope.
We'll take a quick breather and we'll come back for more right here on Breakfast Central. We've got sports and indeed entertainment.